How are we doing, guys? So the next lecture is macronutrients. What are macronutrients? This is something that we need to get our head around, and it still baffles me today that people don't understand what micronutrients are, macronutrients are, and then what proteins, fats, and carbs are. So obviously protein, fats, and carbs are a macronutrient. Micronutrients come into play as your vitamins, minerals, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about macronutrients today. So we're going to talk about protein, carbs, fats. And we're going to talk about one more, which I'll get into at a later date through this. So we're going to start with protein. So protein is probably the one that everybody hears about recently, but it's the one that people struggle the most with. Protein is found in mainly fish, meat, some dairy, and then some vegetables have it. When we talk about protein, you want a complete protein. What do I mean by that? A complete protein has all the amino acids and essential amino acids, and these are your building blocks of the body. So your branch chain amino acids, your essential amino acids, your leucine, your glycine. There's 20 amino acids, there's 9 essential amino acids. There's a lot to go in on that. We're not really going to touch on that today because we're going to talk about the basics of what protein is. So best sources, you've got chicken, ground turkey, ground beef, fish, yogurt, tofu, egg whites. You want to go a little bit more exotic, you've got bison, you've got boar, you've got kangaroo, you've got ostrich, then you've got venison, partridge. These are all good, great sources of protein. It depends on your taste and how exotic you want to go. You've got your leaner types, and you've got your fattier types. So obviously your pork, your lamb, your beef, depending on if it's 5% mince or not. They're your fattier cuts. Obviously chicken legs going to be fattier than chicken breast. So it all depends on what you're dieting down or dieting for at that point. If you're trying to put on size, you're not going to be too fussed about the amount of fat that comes with it or how lean it is. If you're trying to bulk, again, it's going to be the other way around. So that's what we're working with. Protein is probably the one most commonly overlooked macronutrients, with many individuals finding it challenging to incorporate sufficient amounts into their diet. Fortunately, these days there is a numerous amount of products available today that's designed to help enhance protein intake. Protein plays a vital part in our body, muscular development, prompting us to be satisfied to satiety. It helps to facilitate recovery. There's just so many things that it helps with, and it's building blocks for muscle and all sorts. So yes, it is one of the main things that we want. Protein, 4 calories per gram. So we get 4 calories of protein per gram of protein. So 150 grams of chicken will give you about 34 grams of protein. So this misconception is if you eat 150 grams of chicken, you're going to get 150 grams of protein. You're not. You're only going to get 4 calories per gram of protein. So there's going to be other things in there. Okay, so you've got other macronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and all sorts that make up that block. Okay. Protein affects the body, effects on the body composition. So it increases satiety. So when you're dieting down, it will make you feel fuller. Balanced with veg and fruit, it's a great way to help diet down. So it will make you feel fuller for longer. It has a greater thermic effect than other foods. So it will, once you eat it, your body will have to work harder to burn it. So your thermic effects of your body will warm up. So you're burning more calories. keeps protein can help essential muscle mass and keeps you from gaining fat. In a calorie deficit, protein can cause greater fat loss, just for the fact it can keep you fuller for longer, and it's going to maintain your muscle. Dosing based on volume of exercise, age, body composition, total energy. So, depending on all your factors of what your body is to what is, minimum of 1.1 gram per pound of body weight, up to 1.3 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. So depending on where you're starting, so working out how much protein you need, you want to be minimum of 1 gram per pound of your body weight, working up to, depending on how active you are, how much muscle you got, up to between 1.3 to 1.5. The amount you want 20 to 40 grams needed for protein synthesis per meal. So you want to be having at least 20 grams per meal. This, I say that you're wanting to have, it depends on your how many calories you've got, how many meals you've got, how much protein you've got, your allowance. So it's roughly about 0.4 grams per kilo per meal. Okay, 70 grams needed to attribute muscle to stop muscle protein breakdown. Again, that depends on the size of the person. Protein, when we count protein, you don't just count it from the main sources. So proteins found in rice, nuts, dairy, milk, meat. Your main sources of protein want to come from meat, whole sources of protein, but also you'll be tracking trace calories. If clients are obese, this is based on fat-free mass. So your calorie for what that will be is when they're fat-free mass. So if I've got a 400-pound person, I'm not going to give them 400 grams of protein. I would work then their fat-free mass. So the more fat you have, the less protein you would necessarily want. You want what's fat-free mass in weight. Fats. So going into fats. Now fats come in. We have different types of fats. We have polyunsaturated, monosaturated, saturated fats, trans fats. So we have quite a wide variety of different fats. Everyone knows trans fats are the ones you want to stay away from. But also fats do not make you fat, because this is the one that people get so wrong so many times. It has a ability to, its function for the body is internal organs, body temperature, vitamin absorption, cell membranes, structures and functions of hormones, brain function. There's so many things this helps with, and if your body is severely lacking, I know when I get to a point with me when I neglect fats, is I get a lot of dry skin around my hands, around my fingernails, and that's a sign of low fats. So there's a massive need of fats within our body, and people really do overlook that. Okay, so the vital part that it plays, we get our fats from wild caught salmon in general. Wild caught is just slightly more fat because it's wild and it gets to eat so many other things. Your trouts, your sardines, again, them fats come with protein as well. So they're high salmon, trout, sardines, grass-fed beef, eggs. They're all great sources of omegas and saturated fats. but it's also great sources of protein as well. So they go hand in hand quite well. Avocados, nuts, seeds, oils. You want oils that tend to set when they're cold. So any oils that don't set, so like your vegetable oils, your sunflower oils, they don't really have that greater. They've been over processed at this point. So if you get any oils that when get cold they solidify and go hard, they're the better fats for us. They're less processed. So your coconut oils, your macadamia oils that are out there now, there's avocado oils. These are all great sources of fats. Just we don't want the fats that are getting hard. Dairy, full fat dairy. Again, these guys are definitely some sources of protein, but also good sources of fats within the diet. Butters, large trans fats, processed meats, fried foods. You want to limit them. Butter's one of them ones that there's so many people say butter's crap for you, so many say it's great for you. I think butter's better for you. If you're going to have butter, better more than I would highly recommend no one eats margarine, because it's a couple of molecules away from plastic. I think it's the biggest crap out there that you can put in your body. But again, each to their own on that one. So for me, butter's better substitute. But you want to be limiting your processed meats, foods, fried foods, that sort of thing, that are going to be higher in your trans sort of fats, your bad fats. Obviously, the more of them you eat, the more likely you're going to get high cholesterol, they say. So with calories, it's 9 calories per gram. Excuse me. It's 9 calories per gram of fat. So you get 9 calories, or 9 grams of for every gram of fat, we get 9 calories. So that's why your fats are never too high. And that's why it's easier to eat fattier foods, because the consumption of food is less. So we go to fried foods, we're going to end up eating less food, but use more calories because it's more dense. Okay, so for every gram of protein we have, it's 4 calories. So every gram of fat is 9 calories. So we're nearly doubling, or we are doubling and a bit, the amount of calories by having a gram of fat and a gram of protein. So it's a fine balance to, like, and that's why it's easier, as I say, to eat fattier food. So when you go and have, let's say, pizza, you've got your 4 calories per gram of carbs, which we'll get into in a minute. But then it's loaded. Generally, most pizzas are loaded with 3-4 types of cheese, and then processed meats and stuff like that. You're banging on a lot of calories. So that's the way your pizza all of a sudden goes to 2,000 calories for a large pizza. And then you're full of salt in that and full of carbs in that. So there's definitely a thing around that we need to consider. Your types of fats: saturated, so your dairy, meat, typical tropical oils; medium chain triglycerides, so your short chain fatty acids, so your milk, your grains, your seeds, your nuts; monosaturated, so your plant-based sort of things, so olive oil, macadamia nuts, omega fat 9; your polyunsaturated, that's your fish, olive oil, vegetable oils, nuts, avocado. Personally, for me, I like to stay away from olive oil because I don't feel it's the greatest. I would go personally to more olive oil than vegetable oil. You then want omegas 3 and 6. Omega 3, you want EPA and DHA. So whenever you're looking at an omega supplement, you want to make sure it's got EPA and DHA in it. Flax seeds come with the omega 6, so that tends to be a more seed based one, whereas omega 3, 6 and 9 you can get from fish, mainly 3. total intake of fats these days. So you want to be looking at points. So if you're working out your calories, if you've worked out your calories, you've took off your protein already. So now we're going to work out what your fat intake would be. So you're looking at 0.5 to 1.5 grams per kilo per day, or 0.3 to 0.7 grams per pound a day. Recommended lower intake for optimizing lean mass. So I always work to between 15 and 30% of total energy needed. Personally, especially when we're going into a cut, I won't take anyone's fats below 30 grams a day. If I do, it's literally no more than a week, and I really don't like it because it has such a effect on hormones, the brain, cognitive functions. It's just not a great way. Optimal protein and carb intake should be comprised of complemented by high fat intake. So when you got your protein and carbs, your fat should be complementing it. So you don't want it to be a last thought. For me, when I'm working out nutrients for people, if I'm going into a diet, I will work out the protein fats first. If we're going into a bulk, I generally work protein, carbs, then fats. But I always generally have a consideration for fats first. So for me, I want to know what fats we're putting in there. So for dieting, I work your protein out, then I work your fats, and what's left, I will leave you with that in carbs. When we come to working out for a bulk, I will work out your protein. Protein generally is lower than your carbs than when you're on prep, because your proteins, your muscle building will come from the amount of carbs you build anyway, as long as you've got a sufficient amount. So then the protein, I don't want to be using too much, because it's a good one to use when we start to push calories higher. So if I start your fats off on too high when we're going to a bulk, as we get into that and it gets harder to get food into you, if we're on a moderate amount of fats, it's easy to push them up higher and then get food for people to get food in easier. But if we already start with them higher and I can't push them any higher without making people too fat, then it gets a bit more difficult. So you always want to make sure that your fats are complementing your protein and carbs. In a calorie deficit program carbs first over fats. Sources 8. I don't agree with that statement with it. Your carbs for me in a calorie deficit comes last. Your fats come first, because I want to hold your fats as much as I can. The reason people say in a deficit carbs first is because carbs can keep you with more food than fats will. Fat source intakes, omega-3, American Heart Association, 1 gram per day, 2.2 to 4 grams recommended, 4 to 6 grams of fish oil or algae-based supplements, omega-6, 10%, polyunsaturated fats, 12 to 17 grams, 10% saturated or below 10% saturated fats. Recommended mix of monosaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. So you should have a good mixture of the different types of fats. So this bullshit of you can't eat this fat, you can't eat that fat, it's wrong. You should. The American Heart Association says for all cardiac health, we should have a good mix of monosaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated fats, because we need these within our diet. And this is the biggest thing that people don't understand, is fats play a massive role within our diet and how they're going to help us to progress and keep our hormone balancing, especially if you're getting into the older. So once you hit 35 for a male, generally about 37 to 40 for females, hormones start to come into play. And for males, testosterone drops. For females, we start to get into HRT, where you start to get your hot flushes, get into menopause or premenopausal. So hormones are going to play a part in that, and the longer you can go without having to medicate by helping facts with fats and stuff like that, the better. Obviously, at some point medication has to come into it, because you come into a raving nut jobs. We all do. Men, when their test drops, they can put them into depression. Sex drive goes. They just become total moody cunts, to be honest. And then females, obviously, when they're coming into menopausal, like, you start to get the hot flushes, you don't sleep, you go into a raving nut job. Same as men, really. So it plays a massive part within the brain. So if the more we can have a good source of different fats, the better. Carbohydrates, the devil of the macronutrients. Everyone seems to think carbohydrates makes you fat. Not true. Overeating calories makes you fat, not bloody carbs. Okay, so not eating fats do not make you eating carbs do not make you fat. The function is essentially a non-essential macronutrient, but it does primary and preferred method of fuel for the body. It helps the human brain, nervous system, red blood cells. So it has a function towards the brain, along with, funnily enough, fats and protein. Glycogen stores in skeletal muscle and liver. Large source of dietary fiber, macronutrient contribution, and its thyroid function. Again, it has, same as protein, has 4 calories per gram. You have two types of you have two sorts of fiber that comes from carbohydrates. So you have soluble fiber and insoluble fiber, which I'll get into at another point. Soluble fiber comes with 2 calories per gram. Insoluble comes with no calories per gram. Carbohydrates are often received with negative reputation, with a misconception that it's contributed to weight gain and makes you fat. However, this is not entirely accurate. Whilst carbohydrates are prevalent mostly in more people's diets than anything, accounting for about 70 to 80% of their dietary intake. You go and use MyFitnessPal and it automatically gives you 50% odd. I think it's 50% on carbs, which is fucking crazy when you're trying to diet down, and which most people go and use MyFitnessPal for. Weight gain is primarily the result of consuming excess calories overall, regardless of the source. It is simple. The case of carbohydrates are more frequent and indicated in our foods. So the reason they're more in there is because they taste so bloody good. They're the ones that taste the best. You've got bread. Everyone loves bread. Cakes, flour-based stuff. People love cakes. Rice, pasta. You know, all the foods that people consume. Cereals that are easier. So let's have a look at some options for different variations. So you got rice variations: cream rice, jasmine rice, rice noodles. They're really good sources of carbs because they're easily digestible. They're a lot better on the body. You got white potato, red potato, and sweet potato. Okay, so potatoes, great sources of potassium, so they're definitely a great source of carbs. Oats, brilliant. If some people can't stomach them, some people can. Overnight oats, that sort of thing. Whole wheat and white flour. Whole grains, quinoa, spelt, rye, etc. You got maltodextrin, dextrose, branched cyclodextrin. They're all basically sugar carbs. They're used in like intra-workout drinks, great sources of carbs. So if you're on a bulk and you're trying to get more carbs in, they're a fantastic product to use whilst working out, and you just banged yourself with a load of carbs and got yourself through the workout. Fruits various types, vegetables vary in types. Application for adding sugars in high calorie diet. So if you're adding in, if you got a high calorie diet, you can add some sugary foods into there. Again, carbs are sugar. So these people that go, I'm cutting sugar out. Well, you're not really, because carbohydrates are a sugar. What you're thinking about is refined sugar. So sugar in a bag. So carbs, 4 calories per gram. Recommended amount is I use carbs amounts depending on what they're doing. So for me, I work, as I said before, I work your protein, your fats, and then your carbs out. So if you're on a 4,000 calorie diet, so the recommended is 10 to 5 to 10% of total calories. If you're on 4,000 calories, this is 2 to 400 calories, giving you about 50 to 100 gram carb. I don't totally agree with that, again, because I tend to use more carbs than that. Sorry, that's if you're applying sugars. My bad. So I'm losing my train of thought. So yeah, for adding sugars into it, you want no more than 5 to 10%, which is about 50 to 100 grams of carbs. That's, for me, is if you're bulking. We're not going to add extra sugars in if you're dieting down. It's a waste of calories. Taking 200 to 400 calories for extra sugars isn't going to be suitable for someone dieting down. If you're trying to diet down, you want to limit that. You will limit that. I would go for more for cream of rices, potatoes. You could potentially add some of your intra-workout drinks. Definitely having fruit and vegetables in there. Your sugar, the only sugar I'd want would be fructose coming from your fruit, personally, when it comes to dieting. Going into a bulk, definitely, because it's more calories that we can use up. Types of carbs, we've got simple carbs and we've got complex carbs. So your simple carbs, like are your sugars. So your glucose, fructose, maltodextrose. So your honeys, your milk, your fruit, that sort of thing are all your simple carbs. Then your complex carbs, you're going to come into your legumes, your soybeans, any FODMAP vegetables, so things that will ferment, tends to be complex carbs, vegetable wise. So a big one's broccoli is a pain in the arse for that in the stomach. You've also got then the resistant starches that are coming to fibres, so your potatoes, grains, oats, any carbs really that you cook come into your resistant starch ones. And then you've got gluten ones, so your oats and barley, that sort of thing. Just simple. You can overcomplicate this and go massively into it. Simple carbs, complex carbs. Simple carbs, try to limit the amount you're having, not too much of it. Whereas your complex carbs, your rices, your pastas, that sort of thing, come into play. Carb problems, food allergies. So carbs, this is a difficult one because carbs can give you some that will give you food allergies, so your immune responses to food. So things like bread will give you come with allergens, or you're slightly intolerant to it. And it's I've put it as carbs problems, but this can come across as anything. So when you have a common allergy for like milk, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, shellfish, wheat, soya, you tend to get hives, swelling, diarrhea, trouble breathing. Some can be life-threatening. So they're common allergies. For the carb side of things, it tends to be your wheat and your soya. Sometimes nuts within that, but not often. Then you have food intolerances. So food intolerances is a food you can't tolerate. So a lack of a gene expression for the necessary amount your specific digestive enzymes, which can lead to a GI upset. So that's what food intolerance is. Now, food sensitivity, this is the two different things. You got food intolerance and food sensitivity. Intolerance is something your body can't process. It doesn't have the specific digestive enzyme to tolerate that. So it primarily is diarrhea. We'll come into that. Then you have food sensitivity. So foods that you can be sensitive to. Now, this is a big one let's talk about bodybuilders. So bodybuilders tend to like smash a load of eggs all the time through dieting season. That can cause a food sensitivity. Your body becomes overly sensitive to it. So then that will give you GI upset. Antibodies will then respond, and you'll get bloating, diarrhea, and such forth. Generally, with a food sensitivity, if you stop that food for a while, that sensitivity will decrease. If you continue to eat it, then it will stay around. So there's a difference between intolerance and sensitivity. Resistant starches, probiotics, pros and cons. You can get gas, bloating. Cooked and uncooked rice pastas can cause this. Cooked and cooled potatoes, green bananas, raw oats. So resistant starches can cause prebiotic, cons, gassing and bloated. So there's another carb problem that's coming in there is your resistant starches. Dietary fiber. So we've talked about you're obviously getting fiber through foods. Now, fiber is one of the let's move my head so you can read that. Fiber is one of the ones that is a macronutrient that people overlook a lot and forget about, and we should actually increase them into the diet. So fiber is essential aspects of the GI health, so your gut health. Total dietary fiber is the non-digested carbs specifics. Basically, plants soluble and insoluble types. So the two types are insoluble fibers, structurally and don't retain much water, like soluble fiber. So your insoluble don't contain much water and is more for aiding the bulking of your stool. So if you find that you've got diarrhea or you're constipated, look to your insoluble fibers. You might be eating too many. So if you've all of a sudden started on a nutrition place and gone into a high diet, and we've added too many celery, root vegetables, dark leafy greens, fruit, vegetables with skin on, whole grains, if you've suddenly taken that from nowhere to like loads, that can cause you to be constipated, because you've it's got very little water in it compared to the soluble fibre, but it's also there to bulk out your stool. So all of a sudden, if your stools are too bulky, too hard, not enough water, and you're not drinking enough water, that's going to cause you to be a bit backed up. But it also, likewise, if you're got a little bit of loose diarrhea and you've got diarrhea or loose stools, then adding a little bit more soluble fibre to it is going to bulk that stools out and give you a bit of rigidness around the gut. So soluble fibres, soluble in water is more form gels, jelly type fibres. Can also ferment in the GI, so it can cause a little bit of gut issues sometimes. Some insoluble fibres can be can ferment, some cannot. Can't be fermented, but generally hold the truth defined. So oats, bran, beans, peas, nuts, flax seeds, oranges, berries, tomatoes, carrots, that sort of thing is going to be your soluble fibres. So basically things that are going to be in there, give you some fibre, help with your gut. It's going to be, they're going to ferment in there. It's going to be good bacteria. It's going to be fermenting. It can have say if you've got IBS, soluble fibres like that are going to cause you to go onto a FODMAP diet, because you're not going to want to have them in there because your gut's just not going to process them that well. High fibre diets, they recommend daily allowances 25 grams a day in females, 38 grams per day in males, or 14 grams per 1,000 grams. 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet, you want 28 grams of fibre. Focus on whole food sources first. Then you can move to other, like your supplementation if you need to. No upper limit or safety concerns around large amounts, just that you could become a little bit backed up if you ate too much. Calorie value of fibre is 2 grams per gram of soluble fibre, 0 for insoluble. It's the soluble because it hangs around more. Your insoluble is designed to go through your gut and get out and help to move things along, where soluble is not. So you'll digest that a bit more. Calories into macro totals. So make sure you add it into your macro totals. Consistency in approach with the fibre is a must. If you're inconsistent with it, you'll get inconsistently like a bad gut or so forth. Roles of fibre, we've spoke about a lot of it. Increases satiety for longer. So obviously with some of the some of the products in there, it's a lot of low calorie stuff. So it can keep you fuller for longer. Decreases blood lipids, so the your cholesterol or your fats within your blood. Decreases risk of colon cancer. Whenever anyone else puts cancer things down, I'll roll my eyes at it, because it's one of them. It's there. They say it can reduce it. I don't take it as gospel. I just think it's one of them with that one. GI mobility, so obviously it moves your shite through you, so that helps. Too little or too much can result in diarrhea or constipation. As I said, it's if you're not eating enough, you might have a loose stools, increase your soluble. Likewise, if you're constipated too much. Off season it keeps you regular. Insulin signs, lipid metabolism. It has a whole host of functions throughout the body, with short chain fat. Short chain fatty acids. So it helps with the roll around your short chain fatty acids, insulin signatures, lipid pathways, pathogen suppression. So colon cancer protection. So it's got a roles around that. So it's all over good sort of sauce, to be honest. Hope that's helped, guys. So that's macronutrients. It's a 40-minute lecture on that. Hope you've got some insight into that. It's a bit of a long one. Any questions if you got anything about it? Hope this covers it. It's been a brief outlay. We can dive deep into it once people have watched this. If you'd like me to do a deeper dive on each macronutrient, I will do. Otherwise, thanks for watching and let me know.